The Committee on Oversight and Government Reform will come to order. I'm pleased to introduce our second panel, Mr. Lawrence W. Doyle, Managing Partner of DM Income Advisors, and Mr. John F. Moynihan, Principal at JFM Associates. Welcome to you all. Pursuant to committee rules, all witnesses will be sworn in before they testify, so if you will please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses answered in the affirmative in order to allow time for discussion and, quite frankly, for a Q&A that you'll get quite a bit of. Your entire written statement will be made part of the record. But we would ask that you would limit your oral testimony or opening remarks to 5 minutes. There's a clock in front of you to remind you of that. It'll turn yellow when you have 30 seconds left. And if you'll please make sure that you press the button when you're speaking. And so what we will do is we can have your opening testimony a combined 10 minutes, so however you want to do that. And so, Mr. Doyle, we'll come to you first, and then you can yield to Mr. Moynihan.
I would like to yield to Mr. Moynihan to open, please.
Okay, so Mr. Moynihan, you are recognized for up to 10 minutes. Then.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank you, Chairman Meadows, and other members of the committee for having us here today. My name is John Moynihan, and I'm one of 3 partners that engaged in this investigative effort involving a 501c3, and in particular, the Clinton Foundation, the subject of today's hearing. Please note that we do many investigations into 501c3s, and this is just one of many. When I'm finished, I'd like to introduce my 2 colleagues that are here today, Mr. Doyle, and if it's possible, Mr. Thomas Ragland from the Clark Hill Law Firm. Tom has been very active with us in our efforts. As we move through this, at the conclusion of Mr. Doyle's introduction, I would like to answer 2 questions for the committee. Who are we, and why did we do this? I think they'll give some good color and background as to what we're doing, how we do this for a living, what our motivations are, and why we're here. I'd like to give at this point some special thanks to 3 other individuals who worked on this matter. Mr. Robert Nieves, who's behind me. He was a senior SES executive in the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, where I worked for many years with Mr. Nieves on money laundering and financial crimes. Mr. John Shuro from the law firm of Bowditch and Dewey. He's a master tax analyst, fiduciary, and trust advisor in the field of taxation and investments. And Mr. Thomas Scannell, an attorney at a law firm in Massachusetts, who was a litigator who challenged us the entire process, our evidence, and the way we went about this to ensure the integrity of what we're going to talk about today. At this time, I'd like to yield to Mr. Doyle.
Congressman Meadows and members of the committee, thank you very much for the invitation to present and discuss the topic relating to the oversight of nonprofit organizations with a specific case study on the Clinton Foundation. My name is Larry Doyle, and for purposes of background, John Moynihan and I are the 2 proudest graduates of the College of the Holy Cross. The Jesuit-inspired pursuit of the truth, competitiveness, and playing by the rules have been our calling cards and our commitment throughout John's career in and around law enforcement and mine on Wall Street. For the last 10 years, I have spent countless hours involved in literary and investigative pursuits related to regulatory failure. The comparisons I see between the subprime mortgage market, lack of ratings and regulatory performance, and the Madoff scandal to today's topics are stark. On that note, I welcome providing the following context and perspective for today's hearing. There are currently approximately 1.75 million not-for-profit organizations in our nation today. 90% of these not-for-profits fall within the 501c subset, while close to 2/3 are 501c3 public charities. Recent data highlights that these not-for-profits annually generate approximately $1.74 trillion, with a T, dollars, a 250% increase over the last 20 years, equating it to approximately 9% of our nation's GDP. On a standalone basis, this segment of our economy would be the 10th largest economy in the world. All of which begs the question, who's minding the store, looking out for the donors, and upholding the rule of law? Let us do you want to introduce Tom?
Yeah, at this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like Mr. Ragland to introduce himself.
Thomas Ragland from the Clark Hill firm.
At this point, I'd like to answer two questions. Who are we? We are apolitical. We have no party affiliation to this whatsoever. No one has financed us. I don't know Chairman Meadows. I just met him today. I don't know any of you people, okay? I'm happy to meet you, but we have no relationship to any of you, okay? We are forensic investigators that approached this effort in a nonpartisan, professional, objective, and independent way. We have never been partisan. We come from law enforcement on Wall Street, where each of us has dedicated our entire lives and careers to the rule of law, doing the right thing, pursuing facts. We follow facts. That's all. None of this is our opinion. I emphasize, none of this is our opinion. These are not our facts. They are not your facts. They are the facts of the Clinton Foundation. Why did we do this? This is our profession. People will ask us, are you doing this for money? The answer is yes. This is how we make a living. We do cases. It's that simple. We are forensic investigators, former U.S. law enforcement and private practice, making our living conducting these cases. We did not choose this topic because of who the individuals are or were. In fact, we applaud the efforts of the philanthropic nature of the Clinton Foundation on some of the efforts that they have done. That's not in dispute. We're not here to dispute that. Rather, we have backgrounds in 501c3 charities, including work for, both inside and outside of them. We know the risks in the frequent shortfalls. 501c3s have been found to be particularly vulnerable to abuse and a lack of oversight, especially on the global front. We share a deep and profound commitment to protecting taxpayer dollars. In that context, we saw the controversy surrounding this entity, as well as the significant amount of monies, including U.S. tax dollars, that were flowing through this foundation. We decided and financed out of our own pocket to examine this ourselves. We also firmly believe that no one is above the rule of law, regardless of party, and those who occupy senior positions in our government owe a special duty. It's important to stress that we have not made any conclusions, and to set the record straight, we do not have a lawsuit against anybody. We don't have a complaint against anybody. We have a submission of probable cause to the IRS. That said, we use the FOIA quite substantially and other tools at our disposal to gain quite a bit of public and non-public information. All of the information was obtained completely legally and through the various tools of investigation that we have. At this time, what we would like to do in an expeditious fashion is to state in bullet form the process we went through and to state our findings that are in our submission to the IRS. It is a complex issue. There's a significant amount of information, but let it be said, our claim is a tax claim. It's a claim of probable cause indicating that the foundation operated outside the bounds of its approval that came from the IRS. That's our claim. Yeah.
You have 2 minutes.
Yep.
If we could read our investigative process to you kind of in quick fashion, here's what we did. We went to the 990s. We're financial investigators. We started with the returns that the foundation filed, not that we filed, not that you filed, that they filed. These were their revenue sources and their expenses. We attempted to reconcile all of those donations with expenses. The basis of our claim is we were unable to do that. Larry, go ahead.
On that note, we followed the money, so we made extensive spreadsheets of their revenues and expenses. We analyzed their income statements, and we did a macro review of all their donors, which it's a very barbelled sort of foundation. Less than 0.1% of the donors gave 80% of the money. So we followed the money.
We further went and looked at consent decrees that were issued against the foundation by various states. We reviewed the responses from all the states in which they operated to specific questions about violations, consent decrees, or penalties that they may have paid to those states. We did an analysis of that. The results are quite shocking.
In addition to that, we sourced contracts, MOUs, and interaction with foreign governments, including email exchanges between senior foundation executives and government officials. Additionally, we did a review of all their foreign offices, and we drew a spread map, a spreadsheet, comparing the Clinton Foundation with the Global Fund and PEPFAR. The results were stark.
Our conclusions, in the interest of time, are this. Foreign agent. The foundation began acting as an agent of foreign governments early in its life and has continued doing so throughout its existence. As such, the foundation should have registered under FARA. Ultimately, the foundation and its auditors acknowledged this fact and conceded in formal submissions that it did operate as an agent. Therefore, the foundation is not entitled to 501c3 tax-exempt privileges as outlined in IRS 170C2. Misrepresentations. The Clinton Foundation did not comply with the requirements of 501c3 in that it far exceeded the purposes detailed in its original Articles of Incorporation filed December 23, 1997, and subsequently reaffirmed in numerous other records across many jurisdictions, including with NARA. The foundation did pursue programs and activities for which it had neither sought nor achieved permission to undertake. Such was the case even before the completion and transferal of the Presidential Library in 2004. As such, representation by the foundation to donors was a misrepresentation of the approval, organizational tax status allowing it to raise funds for the Presidential Library and related programs therein. In these pursuits, the foundation failed the organizational and operational test 501c3 Internal Revenue Code 7.25.3.
Additionally, the intentional misuse of donated public funds. The foundation falsely attested that it received funds and used them for charitable purposes, which was in fact not the case. Rather, the foundation pursued an array of activities, both domestically and abroad. Some may be deemed philanthropic, albeit unimproved, while others, much larger in scope, are properly characterized as profit-oriented and taxable undertakings of private enterprise, again failing the operational tests for philanthropy referenced above. The investigation clearly demonstrates that the foundation was not a charitable organization per se, but in point of fact was a closely held family partnership. As such, it was governed in a fashion in which it sought in large measure to advance the personal interests of its principals as detailed within the financial analysis of this submission and further confirmed within the supporting documentation and evidence section. Our last finding, donors' responsibilities. The private foundations that donated to the Clinton Foundation are themselves subject to tax payments on the donations that they made to the foundation under Code IRC 4945, unless they meet specific conditions as outlined in IRS Code 727-19-582.
Completed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you both for your testimony. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, I didn't know you guys. I just came to hearing today, wanted to see what you had to say. Tell me your backgrounds. Are you both accountants?
No. My background, my undergraduate degree from Holy Cross, BA Economics, MBA International Finance, Old Dominion University, magna cum laude.
Mr. Doyle?
I also graduated from Holy Cross as an economics major. I worked on Wall Street. I'm still involved around finance. For the last 10 years, I've spent extensive time investigating and writing about regulatory failure, including publishing a book.
Okay, good. Let's go back to some of the things you said in your opening comments. You said there earlier session, Mr. Conley said you guys were you were in the midst of a lawsuit. That's not accurate?
No, that's completely inaccurate. What we do is we do an investigation under the whistleblower statutes. If you find indicia, probable cause, we have not formulated any conclusions about this. We are under the law to submit that to the IRS, that is the jurisdictional oversight for this. We've made that to submission. Whatever the IRS finds and concludes, we stand by.
So you've submitted that claim or that concern you have to the IRS, what you call a probable cause submission. When did you do that?
August 11th, 2017.
So a year ago, a year and a half ago, almost. Okay? And why did you start this investigation? You getting someone hire you to go dig into this and figure out what's going on?
No, nobody hired us to begin this investigation. We do 501c3 work. To be quite frank,
You did it
we
because
watched-
if you find out there's big time abuse, there's some kind of you get paid.
we do this for a living.
Yep.
If the
Okay.
Clinton Foundation was a $2.5 million issue, it would not have been
How
economically
many other cases have you
consorted.
done where you filed a probable cause submission to the IRS? How many other times have you done that?
First time.
First time. Mm-hmm. So how have you got paid before on this
Oh,
deal?
well, we will get hired by law firms who represent 501c3s that
Okay.
need to get cleaned up.
That's what I figured. Okay. So let's turn to a few of the things that I highlighted in your statements. You said the books don't balance, right? The revenue doesn't match expenses. When have you made that sentence? Can you go into a little detail there? Give me an example.
Well, we did review revenues versus expenses, across all their 990s. It's not so much that they didn't balance, it's what would be represented. We wanted to get our own, we did our own work, all our own work, and we created spreadsheets, and
Yeah.
we looked at, okay, what, on a line item by line item basis, how much were salaries, how much on travel, how much on office expenses, and just created that spreadsheet, again, just to follow the money.
Yeah, right. It's not about balancing. It's about what they spend it on.
Exactly.
Got it. Got it. You also said senior foundation executives and government officials were talking all the time in emails, and there was I think their statement said was it was stark what they had to say, I think was the word you used.
Well,
Walk me through one of those emails. Give me an example of that.
Well, I mean, the discussions between the senior foundation officials prior to the library being turned over to the National Archives, while they were in the process of looking to launch their health-related activities, just the nature of pushing those programs. And when we looked at that, that caused concern in terms of, well, this looked to be far outside what they were approved for.
Yeah.
So they were out there, they're talking about these health-related activities. When we read their articles of incorporation, they were approved for a library. So that to us just was an initial red flag.
Can you get the committee an example of one of those emails where they're way outside the limits of the parameters of where they're supposed to be?
On that specific example, we're talking about a European country that is in a dialogue with senior members of the foundation and eventually signed an MOU for cash flows to support programs. That was happening in 2002. The library, which is the only approval that the IRS gave to them, to the foundation, was turned over in 2004. 2 years before the library was turned over to NARA, senior officials are in email exchanges and dialogue negotiating an MOU between a European-based country and an African country. We have those exchanges.
Okay.
So to us, that's a red flag, because your approval was for a library. Why are you negotiating health-related contracts? If you wanted to do that, you can. You change your articles of incorporation, you seek approval from the IRS, because that was specifically stated in the determination letter given to the foundation. The IRS gave them a determination letter following a 1023 application that said, should you change the purpose, source, intentions of what you're doing, you need to contact us for approval. They did not do that.
And one message over and above that, in one of those emails, the statement was made, this is not a Clinton Foundation program per se, which in our reading and understanding of the law.
Yeah, which means it just isn't, right? Yeah, no, I understand.
Exactly.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. May I have a second round?
The chair recognizes Ms. Norton for 5 minutes.
You submitted, thank you, sir, a complaint to the IRS
No.
and the FBI with allegations against the Clinton Foundation. I think you testified to that in August.
That's not correct, ma'am.
That is not correct.
No, we submit, what it is we put together our investigative findings, and then we do a submission. It's not a complaint, it's probable cause. A complaint is a final document that gets submitted to the court, say if we're going to indict somebody or something like that. That's not what this is. We actually haven't reached any conclusions. We just are citing in our submission indicia or probable cause as to what has gone on, just to be correct.
Why won't you give us a copy of whatever it is you submitted?
We anticipated that question. We have this as an ongoing matter, and we don't know how the IRS will rule on that. Suffice it to say—
What's the point of withholding it from this committee?
I want to answer your question very specifically, because there may be further causes of action that we can't pursue under the law, and we are not going to sacrifice our opportunity to pursue those. This is how we make a living. Not everything that we have done in our investigations are in those submissions. We only put in our submission that which is applicable to a tax claim. We have not put into our submission anything that is not applicable to a tax claim.
So there's more to come.
Not necessarily in this forum, but yes.
Now, to reiterate, you are not whistleblowers.
We are people who are not from inside the Clinton Foundation. We are financial investigators on the outside of the Clinton Foundation who had to file a claim under the whistleblower statute.
You are potential plaintiffs in a Ketam lawsuit.
No, you cannot be a Ketam plaintiff in a tax case. That is not allowed within the law.
So what are you?
In this case, we file under the whistleblowers.
You didn't tell our staff last Friday that you were plaintiffs in a Ketam lawsuit?
Absolutely not. That is completely incorrect.
When our staff, the committee staff, asked you for copies of documents you submitted to the IRS and the FBI, you declined. You also said that you had provided no documents to Republicans on this committee.
We have not.
Somehow, however, on Monday, our Republicans did obtain 1,300 pages
Correct.
of documents from your submission. When they sent them over to us, they claimed you gave Chairman Meadows' office these documents on a disk.
If anybody from the
They said you provided them. Did you or your attorney provide these documents to Chairman Meadows, his staff, or any other Republicans?
We did not.
So we're very confused. Last Monday, our staff emailed you, or rather your attorney, to ask if these documents, again, I apologize, were provided by you. He responded, Moynihan and Doyle did not provide any documents to Meadows' staff.
Correct.
It is my understanding that they gave the document, it is my understanding they were given those documents by a reporter named John Solomon on his own initiative. Do you stand by your statement so that your conditions is you had nothing to do whatsoever with providing these documents to Republicans?
Well, that's not what you asked me.
Well, then
You asked me
respond.
if I delivered the documents to the Republicans, and we did not.
But you did have something to do with it.
Yes, but you didn't ask me that. So if you're asking me now,
I am.
the answer is those documents following a preliminary denial letter by the IRS in which they asked for us for an appeal. We sent them the appeal with pictures of their own IRS agents working on the case. We submitted that in our appeal.
We're getting
Those
contradictory-
documents
We're
were then
getting contradictory information from our Republicans.
Congressman-
They sent us an email on Tuesday, and I'm quoting from it. We received the same 1,300 pages via Meadows' office, and they received this material from Doyle Moynihan. Doyle Moynihan
we didn't give that.
were reticent to come forward and share documents. We have been treating them as whistleblowers. After we received these documents, we asked them for permission, understand I'm quoting, to share with you. Last Friday, their lawyer confirmed we were good to share these documents. Now, look, I don't understand both of these. Both of these things are
Congresswoman?
true.
We'll explain it.
We were emphatic with your staff member that both sides have the same materials, that whatever the Republicans have, the Democratic side should have as well. We are here, not right versus left. John and I, we are all about right versus wrong.
Well, with regard to your question, I want to be very specific. Those materials, we later learned, was supplied to the Republican side by John Solomon. We gave materials to John Solomon in our exercise of trying to understand the playing field here, where the IRS, with its low number of personnel doing this, sends us.
Why did you give him to a reporter? He's a reporter. And did you know?
Why
that he
would we give him to a
Did you know that he would then give them to the committee?
We did not know that. We did not know that.
Mr. Chairman, I suggest that we take this matter up to clarify this confusion outside of hearings.
Sure.
Well, I'll be glad to do that. I can assure the gentlewoman that anything that I have, the minority has, and you know that I will not keep documents from you, and so
I do want that to be clear. That
Actually, we
As
agree.
do we.
As do we.
Yeah.
We want that. We
so
agree with
I
you.
think y'all are in possession of everything that I have.
We agree with you.
and we want to make sure that everybody has a level playing field here. The gentleman from Iowa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I think you said both of you have done extensive work with 501c3s. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you tell me then what is the average percentage of donations or revenues that go to the intended beneficiaries in the average 501c3? I mean, is it 20%? Is it 80%? I don't know.
A lot of the ones that we work on, to be quite frank, are the ones that have problems. Okay? So if you're asking me the question relative to the cases we've worked on, it's significantly lower than that.
Not relative to the cases you work on, just for the industry. What would be?
You would hope, and at least 15, maybe no more than 15% was administrative. You hope.
So 85% of
You
contributions
hope.
would go to
You
the intended beneficiaries.
Yeah.
80%, somewhere in there.
People got to make a living, and you can expect administration within those, but this is about philanthropy and public support for this. You got to give it to the people who need it.
What was the percentage for the Clinton Foundation?
Based upon the information we have from the 990s, and we do not believe that that is complete because we do not have subpoena power, that ranged somewhere around 40%,
Well,
I believe.
actually, Congressman, if I could, it would hopefully be beneficial if I could just quickly run through the percentage breakdown of expenses,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
It'd probably take too much time.
Okay, well, okay.
Just get, do you have an idea? What
I mean,
percent was
grants
it?
and
I don't-
allocations, they gave 12%, compensation, salary, and benefits, 26%, travel, 8%, other and all other expenses, 12%.
Do these percentages seem in line to you, given your expertise?
Well, overall, it might have been about 40% by our calculation ended up going to programs, and 60% was
What
administered.
happened to the revenue levels, the contribution levels of the Clinton Foundation once the Clintons were no longer in political power? What happened to them? They go up or down?
Yeah, they went down, but quite
Significantly?
Quite frankly, our analysis doesn't include that. Our analysis takes this particular foundation from 2005 right through 2015. We break it down dollar by dollar. We start with the first employer identification number issued by the IRS, and we tally that up year by year. We take the second employer identification number that was used solely for a 2-year period for the initial CHI, which from our Freedom of Information Act requirements was approximately $22 million and was not approved to do that. And then
In your analysis, did you come across what appeared to be pay-to-play? I know that wasn't the focus necessarily,
No,
but did you
to
come
be
across?
very clear, our focus is on financial analysis and whether they live within the boundaries. As part and parcel of that investigation, we did come across instances of that, but we put that into a catch-all category
all right.
of just outside the boundaries. That's not really our
Mr.
focus.
Chairman, I'd like to yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Ohio.
You said in your opening statement, you used the term agent of a foreign government. Give me an example of that.
You want to take that one, Larry?
Sure. There are so many examples. Mozambique in 2002, it was a memorandum of agreement between the foundation and the Mozambique to work on their behalf through their Ministry of Health program. And again, through that engagement, it was plainly obvious, again, based on emails that we've reviewed, that this was not a Clinton Foundation program per se. They were there to support the Mozambique Ministry of Health. So really, if we want to reduce this to layman's terms, they were brokering money and they were brokering pharmaceuticals. That's the term on Wall Street we use, brokering. John uses the term agent. They were an agent of money through these donors. They would take a, for lack of a better term, a vig in terms of their fees, broker the money, and then they negotiated these relationships with the pharmaceutical companies. And by the same token, they were brokering the pharmaceuticals and, again, taking the vig.
And is that why I think one of your concluding remarks was the Clinton Foundation functioned as a closely held family partnership, not a charity?
Yes. The reality is the difference between public charities, private foundations, are very exact. Public charities are organizations that are allowed to solicit funds from the general public, which is what they were approved for the library. And they followed that. They solicited funds from public folks. Going along with that, public charities really don't make grants. They don't. They're the end users. They do the program. I have my own 501c3s involving baseball. I fix up a lot of baseball fields in Massachusetts. So when people donate to that, it's $20,000. We go and we pull the weeds out, okay? We do the work. Private foundations are different. Melinda and Bill Gates. On those boards, there may be 1 or 2 individuals. Those foundations are governed in a way that there's a specific function that's going to go on, and they issue grants. A lot of times, those grants go to a public charity. There are striking differences between public charities and private foundations. What happened here, for whatever reason, we don't know and don't have an opinion on it, it became a hybrid. And our analysis shows that this hybrid modeled the Global Fund in Geneva, Switzerland.
That is a hugely important point.
The difference between the Global Fund being a Geneva-based operation that does exactly what Mr. Doyle said, which is to take funds from one country, for whatever purpose, pharmaceuticals or tuberculosis, and to help another country. They are the facilitator, the agent. The difference is they are not subject to U.S. taxation and jurisdictional law. The Clinton Foundation, in conjunction with those same donor countries to the Global Fund and the same recipient countries as the Global Fund, created a separate entity called Unitaid that was formed in 2006. Mr. Clinton and Mr. Gates, who was on the board at Unitaid, together formed with these countries this entity. The difference being that Unitaid became the single largest donor to the Clinton Foundation. Those revenues did not stay outside of the United States. They created jurisdiction and venue by flowing back into the United States, Bank of America, Boston, Massachusetts. That then becomes under the jurisdiction of the governing body, the Internal Revenue Service. At that point, if they are going to be a facilitator and an agent of those money flows, the IRS code could not be any more specific. You can't do that and be an exempt organization. It's okay that you do it, you just pay your taxes.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there. The gentleman's time has expired. So, Mr. Doyle, Mr. Moynihan, I'm going to ask you to try to be succinct and direct, and bluntly, maybe dumb it down for me. I mean, you're talking about stuff that, quite frankly, I have no clue. You know, when you start quoting different statutes and things like that, the average American, we just want to know if there's wrongdoing or not. And I know you say you don't have an opinion. If you don't have an opinion, then why did you file a probable cause filing with the IRS? Because obviously you have an opinion that something was wrong, or you wouldn't have done a probable cause. Is that correct?
Based on our facts.
On facts.
Based on your facts, do you believe there's probable cause of wrongdoing? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Hugely. Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me get to this. I think you guys have been well advised in terms of trying to protect your interests. So let me just be blunt. I checked with the IRS commissioner. Nothing that you say in this forum, according to him, will actually affect any potential claim that you've already submitted. That's what he told me. So if that is indeed the case, do you have a problem giving the 6,000 pages that you've submitted, if it will not affect your financial claims, to the minority and the majority of this committee? Do you have a problem with that?
We'll take that under advisement with counsel.
Well, then you need to go ahead with your counsel right now, because, listen, my patience is running thin. You're here to provide expert testimony on what you've found. And what I'm saying is that if you have a legitimate claim, we will protect that. But if you're not going to share the information with this committee and cut to the chase, my patience is running out. So I'll give you a few seconds to talk to your attorneys, and you can come back and decide how you want to proceed. Okay?
Perfect. So we just spoke to our attorney. We will not be providing all those materials. We will answer any questions that you have.
All right. So just so you're aware and your counsel is aware, have you submitted all those documents to the IRS?
Yes.
Have you submitted them to the FBI?
Yes.
Okay. We will compel you to bring all those documents to this committee then, and I can just tell you, I think you're being poorly advised by your counsel, and I'm saying that directly to you, sir. Let me just tell you, this is a hearing to get to the truth. And what you're saying is you're all about the truth, Mr. Moynihan. Isn't that what you said?
Sure, so just ask.
Okay, if you're about the truth, then why aren't you willing to give us the documents?
Because we're explaining the documents, and we have other claims. I don't think we should be sacrificing our potential other
I said
claims.
if I could protect your financial claims and get a commitment from the IRS, would you be willing to give those documents?
But that's not our only claim is with the IRS. You keep making that mistake. Our claim isn't just with the IRS. We have other claims that we can bring.
So you're saying you're going to bring civil or a complaint against the foundation?
We have opportunities that we will pursue. This is what we do for a living,
All right,
sir.
so let me understand that. So you're saying potentially you're going to bring a civil lawsuit against the Clinton Foundation, and that this public hearing might affect that?
No, we didn't say that. What we're saying is that the IRS, excuse me, the IRS submission stands on its own merit. The IRS will make their determinations based upon what they find. If the IRS finds one way, we'll have one reaction. If they find another way, we'll have another reaction with counsel.
Mr. Moynihan, do you believe that based on any interviews that you've done with anybody at the Clinton Foundation, that there was criminal activity that might have happened within the Clinton Foundation?
We believe there is indicia of that, yes.
All right, and you base that based on what?
The interviews.
With whom?
We interviewed Mr. Andy Kessel. Larry can speak to that directly. We were together.
We interviewed Mr. Kessel on November 30th, 2016. I had reached out to him in early to mid-October. Andy was a former acquaintance of mine on Wall Street. Andy called me back on November 9th at 9:45 in the morning, about three and a half weeks after I had reached out to him. We exchanged pleasantries. I had informed Mr. Kessel about my relationship with Mr. Moynihan so that he was fully aware of who John was. We got together, and he was very forthcoming. We stand by every word that we provided.
So what does forthcoming mean? I mean, what alleged criminal activity do you believe that the Clinton Foundation may have been a part of?
His statements to us were very clear and very genuine. He told us that Mr. Clinton, on a regular basis, mixed and matched his personal business on an ongoing basis with that of the foundation.
All right, so your conversations with Mr. Kessel indicated that there was commingling of funds between the president and the foundation. Is that correct?
Yeah, expenditure of donated funds between his
So
personal.
he would use donated funds to the foundation for personal use.
That was
Private annulment is what they would call that.
That was stated to us, yes.
And so were there any other criminal allegations?
Well, he just stated to us very specifically, and it kind of took us both off guard, to be quite frank. I've been doing this business for a long time. When someone says to me, quote, "I know where all the bodies are buried," it was shocking.
But that's hyperbole. So go ahead. Tell me what is the other potential criminal activity that may have happened?
Well, his statements to us about that, we have submitted with the IRS. It's up to them to make a determination on that.
What are the alleged other criminal activity that was communicated to you, Mr. Moynihan, from Mr. Kessel?
What he communicated to us was the commingling of funds. That's the most specific of illegal activities on a regular and ongoing basis.
Did you have another interview with Miss Fischel?
Ms. who?
Barbara Fischel?
Barbara Fischel?
Yeah, is there
No.
anybody else that you interviewed other than that?
We did.
Who was that?
We're not at liberty to give that name.
Sir, your sworn testimony, let me just tell you, that dog doesn't hunt here. So if you've interviewed someone else, as a witness, you're required to answer that or plead the fifth. What do you want to do?
We made a confidentiality agreement with her at the time, so we'll plead the fifth. But we're happy to speak about the interview. We just can't give her name up.
So what you're saying is you have a confidentiality agreement with someone you interviewed?
Yeah.
And what was that person's position?
A very senior position within the Clinton Healthcare Access Program.
All right, so within what is, I guess, referred to as CHI, is that the largest part of the Clinton
Correct.
Foundation?
Yes.
And how many dollars of assets would be in the CHI part of the foundation?
We've got it right here.
Well, just give us a minute. We'll look in the.
Approximately $900 million by the analysis that we had done.
Okay, and what were the allegations that she alerted you to?
She stated very specifically that the funds were used as essentially a piggy bank. You could travel and vacation when you wanted to, that the senior administrators within this fund, operating this fund, treated this and commingled this as personal business, foundation business, for travel and personal expense.
So what you're saying is that they could use the Clinton Foundation charitable donations for private travel and go on personal trips. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we see that as conversion of foundation property.
What else?
We can, if you roll the sheet down.
Oh.
Go ahead.
She also referenced Mr. Clinton's relationship with one of his largest donor, that being Bill Gates, at which point in time she said that they were not on speaking terms, and referenced the fact that at this point in time, during 2009, that the Health Initiative had not received prior formal approval by the IRS for their activities.
In fact,
So hold on. So you're saying the Clinton Foundation had not received proper approval? Who did not receive proper approval?
The Clinton Health, prior to 2010, CHI was the acronym for Clinton HIV/AIDS. What we are led to believe from this interview was Mr. Gates telling Mr. Clinton, you need to get formal approval for this activity, which went all the way back to 2002. That's the premise of our submission. And it was at that point in time that they actually went and got formal approval for that activity from the IRS, and CHI then became known as Clinton Health Access Initiative.
All right. So who approved the 501c3 status for the foundation?
it would have been the IRS.
Who at the IRS? Do you have the document?
Yeah, well, we have it. I don't know what the person's name is offhand, but we've got the determination letters.
And it was approved for what? Building a library, or?
The initial approval was simply for a library.
So who modified it?
That's what we worked on. We saw no modifications to the Articles of Incorporation. If you want to change your status, you need to notify the IRS.
No, I get that. You've said
Okay.
that before.
Okay.
So was there any modification?
No.
All right. We've got a second round. The gentleman from Georgia, I'm going to go to you in just a second as soon as you're ready. So
Could I answer to your question? A very specific misrepresentation that went on with the second CHI. I think that's what you want to know. In order to go forward, the application has a Schedule G that asks you if this second CHI is a successor organization to a previous one. So you have the library, then you have this CHI running unapproved. They clearly were advised, conversations involving Mr. Gates and what have you, as we've learned, you got to get approved. They go and make an application. And on the form, Schedule G, when it's asked, is this a successor operation, they specifically and affirmatively answer no. That is a misrepresentation because it's the same people doing the same thing. It's the same people doing the same thing.
Additionally, we asked this individual about the Charity Navigator rating of a 4-star, to which she laughed out loud and said, I've worked within charitable organizations at large firms. The Clinton Foundation is the furthest thing from a 4-star rating.
In fact, that person went on to further state to us that she advised her own friends in multiple businesses where she had worked previous to that to stop donating to the Clinton Foundation. It was so bad.
all right. So gentlemen, I'm going to yield to the gentleman from Georgia. Let me say this. So it is critically important that we have the documents. You know, we can hear your testimony all day long, but it's not fair to Ms. Norton nor to me for us to have your testimony that we can't verify with these other documents. It's just like you submitting something and suggesting that it's one way with the IRS. Have you submitted these documents to the FBI?
Yes.
Do you believe that they have opened up an investigation on it based on your conversations with the FBI?
Yes. Yes.
So you believe that there is an open criminal investigation by the FBI on the Clinton Foundation out of what field office?
Little Rock,
Little Rock,
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
So you believe out of Little Rock, Arkansas, there's an open criminal investigation into the Clinton Foundation going based on information that you've submitted to the FBI?
the agent informed me as to how very, very, very grateful he was for our documents and the case fashion in which we presented it.
All right, so that is incredibly important. If you're telling me there's an open criminal investigation, maybe that makes sense why Mr. Huber was not here. Because if he couldn't comment on an ongoing investigation, perhaps that's why he didn't show up.
That's why we want you as the committee to come to your own logical conclusions and not have us make conclusions for you.
All right, I'll recognize the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for having to step out. I know some of my concerns and questions have no doubt already been covered, but I do want to just bring up a couple of things for my own satisfaction and understanding, and I will reiterate the necessity of the documents. To be very honest with you, I was a little hesitant coming into this second panel here because I feel like you're using us for your own benefit, and we need the information so that we can do the proper oversight that we're responsible for doing.
Excuse me, sir. You invited us. We didn't invite ourselves.
No, but you've not turned over the documents, and we need those documents to perform the
Let me
oversight
be
that
very
we need to
clear.
do.
You invited us. We told the staff members you
I
weren't going to
understand-
get
I
documents, and
understand
if you
who
didn't
invited
want to invite us, then disinvite us.
I understand who invited who, but I also know there's a little game going on here, and I understand from a financial perspective some of it, but we are here to do oversight, and we need cooperation. Have you been in contact with Attorney Huber or anyone on his investigative team?
We sent all of our information and documents to Salt Lake City, Utah in early April. We provided subsequent information in mid-April, late May, and then again in mid to late October. Our first communication with the U.S. Attorney's Office out of Salt Lake was late November. I guess it was 2 weeks ago.
All right, so you have been in communication.
We received 2 incoming phone calls that Friday.
Can you say with whom, who contacted you,
One of the assistant U.S. attorneys.
and when was that?
Friday afternoon, whatever that,
2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago,
2 weeks
November
ago?
30th,
Yeah.
was it?
All right, so there's no communication prior to 2 weeks ago?
No, there was not.
Okay. And what was the basic nature of the communication?
We are reviewing your materials.
Okay. So you did not have a conversation? You just
Oh,
said-
no, sir. To be clear, just like with the FBI, it's a one-way communication. They ask, they don't tell.
All right, so how do you know then whether or not they were following up on the information you gave them?
Based upon their questions.
All right, but they didn't tell you that they're following up.
No, they asked for
All right,
material.
so you're giving an educated guess that you believe they're following up.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. What about the Justice Department's Inspector General Michael Horowitz? Have you been in communication with him or anyone on his team?
We informed the Inspector General of our submission and documents by a letter back, I could look at the date up, probably somewhere mid-year.
All right, have you heard back? Has there been any communication?
No.
No.
All right, so you don't know if anything is going on
Not with
on that end at all. All right, in 2011, the Clinton Foundation hired an outside law firm, Simpson Thatcher, that came up in the first panel, and they were talking about performing a governance review of the organization. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
All right, this memo has been widely spread in the media, and you're familiar with it. Based on your investigation, do you find any indication that there was ever a quid pro quo of donations in return for some sort of action by Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State?
Yeah, but it doesn't come from that memo. It comes from our own investigation.
Yeah, well, that was my question. From your investigation,
Yes.
are you convinced that that took place?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to further clarify because, Mr. Doyle, you indicated how very grateful the FBI was for the information. But the FBI never confirms what they're going to do with information or indicate that there would be an ongoing open criminal investigation. Did it?
Pardon me?
You didn't hear my question, Mr. Doyle?
I did not hear it.
It was you who said how grateful the FBI was to receive information.
Yep, yes.
I am asking you whether they in any way confirmed that this information would be used as part of an ongoing criminal investigation.
No, he didn't, no.
I wanted just to clarify that. Now, I also want to clarify because of your own status, because you don't classify yourself as whistleblowers, right?
Well, we would be an outside whistleblower, not an inside whistleblower.
Are you this is a key tam lawsuit against the Clinton Foundation.
Not involving us. But
What?
Not involving us. We don't have a key TIM lawsuit.
You are potential plaintiffs for.
We will never have a key TIM tax lawsuit involving the Clintons. It's not allowed. We have a submission to the IRS. We are not adverse to the Clinton Foundation. If any action is taken, it's taken by the IRS. It's not taken by us. We submit probable cause. They determine if there's an action to be taken. We are not adverse in our submission to the Clinton Foundation. We gave them probable cause. They'll determine it.
Are you seeking any monetary award?
Yes. If the IRS is successful, the whistleblower statute allows for a reward for U.S.
How
citizens.
much money are you seeking?
Whatever the IRS determines.
The whistleblower program has a 10 to 30% payout. We would maintain that the taxable revenue could run anywhere from $400 million to $2.5 billion.
Very important to put that on the record. Just to confirm, you yourselves never worked for the Clinton Foundation.
No.
You have not had access to their internal files or anything of the like.
No.
No.
Now, in your written testimony, and here's this date again, you stated that you had sent your submission to the IRS on August 11th, 2017.
Correct. Yep.
You also conceded, and I quote, this is important, recently we received a letter of preliminary denial of our claim.
Correct.
We asked you, what does that mean? And we asked you for a copy of that letter from the IRS. Why won't you give us a copy since you did receive a letter of preliminary denial?
Because we're in an appeal status right now.
You're appealing the denial.
Yeah, so they actually encourage you, they actually say in the letter, please submit an appeal. They actually ask you, please submit an appeal as if we're wrong. So what we did is we sent our appeal in with a photocopy of the FBI and the IRS CID on their jackets removing boxes from the Clinton Foundation after they had brought a 757 down and taken all the materials out of the Clinton Foundation, Little Rock, Arkansas. We sent that with our appeal to demonstrate to the IRS that your letter coming from Atlanta doesn't reconcile with what's going on in Little Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair recognizes himself, so I want to do a little follow-up here. So your conversations with the special agents in Little Rock, Arkansas, Mr. Doyle, was that you?
That was me.
All right, and so your conversations with them, they acknowledged they had received your submission and the pages of documents, is that correct?
That is correct.
And did they acknowledge any work that they're doing with that, either directly or indirectly?
Did not comment.
So they just said, thank you for the
Well,
submission.
I mean, it was a very cordial, professional conversation. I can't comment. Thank you very much. You know, we were very, very grateful for your efforts. And
Then what makes you believe that there's a criminal investigation out of Little Rock then? If that's the extent of it.
I spoke to him twice. I spoke to him in August and then again in October.
All right, so what would make you think that there's a criminal investigation, Mr. Doyle? I mean, if it was just cordial, I mean, then why would you believe that there's?
Well, in the August conversation, he said this is an open and ongoing situation.
All right, so he said this is an open and ongoing situation? Investigation or situation? Or matter?
I apologize. Investigation.
All right, so it was an open and ongoing investigation that he couldn't comment on.
Yes.
So that would indeed indicate that there's an investigation.
And Chairman, look, I worked for the DEA. I do work all over the world in these cases still. The fact that they followed up with a second inquiry, not just, hey, thanks, don't let the door hit you on the way out, but then they follow up again. That's not the sign of a closed investigation.
I get that, Mr. Moynihan, but I can't take your experience at the DEA and I appreciate the thought, but the other part of that is, Mr. Doyle, if they said there was an open and ongoing investigation, that's what you recall that they said.
That is what I recall to the best of my memory.
And so if indeed there's an open and ongoing investigation and you've given the information to them, why would the IRS not view that as substantial?
Well, that's...
Did they know that there was an open and ongoing investigation?
We sent a picture to the IRS.
I heard that.
Right, so they know.
That-
Some part of the
we
IRS
included
knows.
that in our appeal letter
In your
back to
appeal.
them.
All right.
And to that point, Congressman, the IRS individual was, I would say, more than mildly surprised at our interaction with the FBI.
All right. Why do you think Mr. Huber waited until November the 30th to call you about 4 letters that you had sent prior? Because you had sent one on the 14th, the 18th, the 29th, those were in April, 29th of May, as I recall, and October the 10th or 12th, based on what I understand. Why did they wait until November 30th to give you a call?
We don't know.
Do you think it might have had to do with the fact that you're coming here to testify?
Well, I mean, this testimony invitation just came recently. I don't know why.
They were fully aware because we had asked them to come and be a witness at this particular hearing, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call from Mr. Huber's, second in command? Is that correct?
I don't know if he's the second, but he was clearly an assistant U.S. attorney dealing directly with Mr. Huber.
So I find it just very coincidental that on November 30th, a few days before the hearing, after they had been noticed that we wanted them to come and testify, all of a sudden they would start following up. So, Mr. Doyle, what did they say about the documents that you had provided them? Did they have them all?
Congressman, he said that we are reviewing your material. I asked him if he could comment if further beyond that, if this was open and ongoing. He said, we are reviewing your material. He called me back a few hours later, asked specifically about, one exhibit, and then asked further if you could, do you have these on a disk? I said, I have them on a thumb drive. Would you like them? Please resend them. So I resent the thumb drive that afternoon.
So was that the first time that Mr. Huber and his team actually got the documents from you, Mr. Doyle?
That was the third time.
Third time.
So you're telling me that on November 30th, they called you back and they couldn't find the first 2 submissions that you had made to the Department of Justice and Mr. Huber? That they wanted you to send them again?
That's
Is that what you're telling me?
We're concluding that ourselves. That's what we concluded.
And it was just what I've been told by DOJ, which I do not believe, just to be frank, is that this was the normal process of following up on recent correspondence. What was the most recent correspondence that you had with the Department of Justice?
That one.
October 10th?
Well, I had the correspondence that with the attorney.
Well, after the follow-up. Prior to the phone call, what was the most recent correspondence you had with the Department of Justice, Mr. Huber?
Oh, we sent materials.
October the 10th of 2018,
I believe that
delivered
was the
by
date.
FedEx on
Yes,
October
yes,
12th of
yes,
2018.
yes, Congressman.
I think I got a copy of the
yes,
FedEx delivery.
Yes.
And so They didn't respond to your April 4th letter. They didn't respond to the letter later in April. They didn't respond to the May 29th letter, and they finally responded to your October 10th letter a few days before a hearing that was coming up.
Correct.
That is correct.
Do you think that that shows the level of interest that a special prosecutor would show?
We don't know his caseload, but quite frankly, we're disappointed that 3 years level of effort goes into this. We are not paparazzi. We are not the media. We don't want anybody to even know who we are and the work that we do. We're financial investigators. That's what we do. We get paid to do this for a living. We work for ourselves. We don't get paid by anybody else.
And Congressman,
So it's disappointing that it took that long to hear from them.
we shared our materials not only with the attorney office in Salt Lake, also in Little Rock, but other U.S. attorneys' offices as well that had been indicated as, providing support or working on Clinton-related matters. We also shared our materials with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. So various jurisdictions that we felt would be interested both at the state and federal level.
And you've shared all of those documents with those entities, and yet you somehow do not believe that you should share it with Congress and the American people?
Well, this
answer that one for me, Mr. Moynihan.
I'll answer it
I
very
really,
clearly.
I want to hear this because, quite frankly,
Are you going to prosecute the Clintons? Are you going to bring an action against the Clintons that would yield us economic consortium? I don't think you are. Those entities.
But I thought, hold on to your testimony. Don't get cute with me, because I promise you.
I'm telling you the truth.
I promise you. I thought you said you were all about the rule of law. That was in your opening statement.
We
all
are, and
about justice and truth.
And that's why we've presented to the law enforcement agencies, which you're not.
Mr. Moynihan, let me just say this. We have an oversight responsibility, and I can assure you that when you come in here, it is incumbent upon you to be open and transparent. And we can make criminal referrals just like anybody else. Now, we cannot prosecute. You're exactly right. But what I can tell you is this, is that when you come before us and you've shared it with all kinds of entities, and to not actually listen to my good friend to my right here and say, you deserve to see the same evidence that we've shared with others, I don't find how that actually provides a good foundation for truth and transparency.
It's just, I think we're looking at this from completely different perspectives. We are financial investigators. We do cases. We present our evidence to those jurisdictions, in this case, the IRS, that would bring a case. That's not what you do. So that's why we present it to them and not to you.
Okay. Well, I can assure you that we do have something here that will compel us to get the information, either from you or from the agencies.
Sure.
And I can assure you that we will, so that my good friend to my right and the entire committee can review these documents and make their own claim.
We welcome that from you.
Final question. Mr. Doyle, you said anywhere from $400 million to $2.5 billion might be subject to taxation. So you're saying worst case is, in your opinion, $400 million were improperly used in a charitable foundation named the Clinton Foundation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it could be all of it.
It could be all of it.
All right. If there's no further business before the committees, the committee stands adjourned.